You won't believe what's happening behind the scenes in Hollywood right now. Blake Lively's sworn statements are being called into question. Ryan Reynolds' role is far more intense than anyone imagined, and Justin Baldoni says he was completely ambushed. Secrets, text messages, and shocking court documents are exposing the truth, and it's bigger than you think. Stay with me because every detail is about to shake Hollywood to its core. The story begins in a world where fame and power collide with ambition and secrecy, where every move is scrutinized and every interaction becomes evidence, and the whispers of Hollywood echo through the halls of penthouses and studios alike. And it is here, in this charged atmosphere, that Blake Lively stands at the center of a storm of allegations and declarations that have captivated the public for months, where sworn statements under penalty of perjury reveal a narrative that shifts depending on perspective, and the tension is palpable from the very first moment, where the accounts of meetings and private conversations paint a picture of conflicting realities, where Justin Baldoni describes an encounter that left him frozen in disbelief, and yet the declaration of Blake seeks to minimize the involvement of those around her, suggesting that Ryan Reynolds only briefly walked into a conversation as though his presence was inconsequential, while evidence, including text messages and eyewitness testimonies, contradict this, painting a far more complex and volatile scenario, where Reynolds allegedly confronted Baldoni in a manner described by witnesses as aggressive and intimidating, and the meeting itself is recounted by multiple participants as long and harrowing, leaving those present shocked and unsure how to proceed. And the narrative becomes even more intricate when the involvement of Hugh Jackman is considered, who, according to timelines compiled by Baldoni's attorneys, was present briefly, adding a layer of celebrity gravitas to an already tense situation, while Blake's declaration omits mention of Jackman, creating discrepancies that further complicate the understanding of events. And the story continues to unfold through a series of text messages that reveal Blake's own reflections on the encounter, with statements that suggest she found the situation oddly satisfying and revelatory, and yet, publicly, she presents herself as calm and composed, minimizing the turmoil she describes in private communications. And these contrasting portrayals raise questions about credibility and intention, and whether the manipulation of narrative serves to protect powerful figures around her, while simultaneously shifting focus away from the alleged misconduct she initially claimed to have experienced. And the evidence shows her actively communicating with peers about how the encounter made her feel empowered and in control, even as she portrays herself in court as vulnerable and concerned for her safety. And the juxtaposition between the private joy and public caution illustrates the complexities of navigating power dynamics in Hollywood, where every interaction is magnified and interpreted through the lens of fame and influence. And as the story develops further, it becomes apparent that the tension extends beyond individual personalities and touches upon broader systemic issues in the entertainment industry, including the exploitation of women and the prioritization of protecting high-profile figures over addressing genuine grievances. And this pattern of behavior is highlighted through the involvement of attorneys who have historically represented other notorious figures in Hollywood, using strategies that sought to discredit victims and manipulate narratives to benefit the powerful while minimizing accountability. And the connections to figures such as Harvey Weinstein, Jeffrey Epstein, and other influential men underscore the high stakes involved in these legal battles and the public perception of justice and fairness. And as each filing and declaration is examined, the inconsistencies between personal communications and formal statements reveal a careful orchestration of narrative intended to influence perception and control outcomes. And Blake's strategic positioning in court, combined with her social media interactions and private messaging, creates a labyrinth of influence where it becomes challenging to discern fact from crafted portrayal, and the testimony from witnesses, including first ADs, producers, and legal representatives, further paint a picture of a high-pressure environment where fear, confusion, and professional obligation intersect. and the descriptions of meetings lasting multiple hours where participants felt ambushed and unprepared illustrate the intensity and psychological strain experienced by those involved, while simultaneously highlighting the performative aspects of celebrity involvement, where appearances and reputations are meticulously managed and manipulated. And as one delves deeper into the timeline, it is evident that communications regarding creative decisions, including trailers, music selection, and casting, were entangled with personal interactions and protective instincts, where Blake's choices were influenced not just by artistic vision, but also by strategic considerations related to her allies and associates, including Taylor Swift and her husband Ryan Reynolds. And her selective disclosure of information to court and collaborators demonstrates a calculated effort to maintain control over narrative flow, while simultaneously shielding certain individuals from scrutiny. And the evidence shows her actively communicating with peers about how the encounter made her feel empowered and in control, even as she portrays herself in court as vulnerable and concerned for her safety. And the juxtaposition between the private joy and public caution illustrates the complexities of navigating power dynamics in Hollywood, where every interaction is magnified and interpreted through the lens of fame and influence. And as the story develops further, it becomes apparent that the tension extends beyond individual personalities and touches upon broader systemic issues in entertainment, media, law, and societal expectations, creating a narrative that is complex and shocking to watch and impossible to ignore in its unfolding drama and tension and intrigue. As the tension escalates in Hollywood, the story of Blake Lively, Ryan Reynolds, and Justin Baldoni continues to unfold, revealing layers of interpersonal conflict, legal maneuvering, and strategic storytelling, where every decision and interaction carries weight and consequence. And the sworn declarations and text messages paint a picture of a complex chess game where perception, manipulation, and control dominate the narrative. And the meeting on January 4th is emblematic of the intense pressure and emotional volatility present in these high-stakes productions, where witnesses, including first ADs, producers, and legal representatives, recount an atmosphere of shock, disbelief, and emotional strain. And the contrast between Blake Lively's public statements and private communications demonstrates a deliberate shaping of narrative, where she presents herself as calm, collected, and professional, while text messages to confidants suggest delight, satisfaction, and even gloating at the perceived disruption caused to Baldoni, revealing a duality that is at once compelling and disconcerting. And as Justin Baldoni describes the encounter, it is clear that he experienced it as an ambush, leaving him emotionally paralyzed and struggling to respond, while being subjected to repeated demands for apology and acknowledgement for grievances that he did not intend to cause. And the involvement of Ryan Reynolds adds a layer of intensity, where, according to multiple witnesses, he confronted Baldoni forcefully, admonishing him for supposedly fat-shaming Blake and creating an environment of intimidation that contributed to the perception of an unsafe workplace, while Blake's declaration seeks to downplay his role, suggesting he only briefly participated in the conversation, creating a divergence between first-hand accounts and sworn testimony. And the unfolding story also involves the selective disclosure of celebrity involvement, including Hugh Jackman and Taylor Swift, where Blake strategically omits or misrepresents their participation in meetings and discussions to protect them from scrutiny, while simultaneously positioning herself as the central figure of influence and control within the narrative. And the timeline of communications around creative decisions, including trailer edits, music selection, and casting, further complicates the story, revealing how artistic choices were entangled with personal dynamics and protective instincts, where Blake leveraged her relationships with Taylor Swift and others to assert influence over production outcomes. And the manipulation of perception extends to court filings, where declarations and statements are carefully curated to present a version of events that favors certain individuals, while obscuring the emotional and psychological impact on others involved in the production. And the broader implications of this story highlight systemic issues in Hollywood, where power, influence, and fame intersect with accountability and ethical responsibility, creating a landscape where even minor actions can have far-reaching consequences. And as the text messages between Blake and her confidants illustrate a mix of pride, strategic calculation, and personal satisfaction, the audience gains insight into the ways in which individuals navigate complex networks of relationships, influence, and reputation, while simultaneously managing public perception and legal risk. And the revelations about attorney involvement, including firms historically connected to notorious figures, underscore how legal strategy and celebrity influence are leveraged to protect powerful individuals while potentially minimizing the validity of claims made by others, creating a tension between justice and influence. And the narrative is further intensified by the contrast between private joy and public restraint, where Blake's gloating and sense of empowerment in private communications starkly contrast with her careful and composed statements in formal settings, highlighting the performative nature of celebrity presence and the careful orchestration of messaging that shapes public understanding and opinion. And as the story evolves, the audience witnesses the cascading effects of these actions, where Baldoni's professional and emotional experience is shaped not only by the events themselves, but by the perception management and strategic positioning of those around him. And the testimony of producers and legal representatives adds nuance, revealing the human cost of navigating high-pressure and emotionally charged environments, where authority, influence, and fear converge. And the unfolding drama also intersects with broader cultural conversations about gender, power, and accountability, illustrating how women and men navigate positions of influence while balancing ethical considerations, personal safety, and professional responsibility. And the complex interplay of these forces highlights the precariousness of reputation and the volatility of perception in Hollywood, where narrative control can shift rapidly depending on disclosures, alliances, and strategic decisions. And the text messages and communications also reveal the ongoing negotiation of creative control, where Blake asserts authority over edits, trailers, and musical selections in ways that intertwine professional vision with personal relationships and influence, creating a web of connections and leverage that underscores the complexity of decision-making environments in high-stakes production environments. And the tension between private communications and public statements illustrates the multifaceted nature of celebrity influence and the careful orchestration required to maintain reputational integrity while navigating legal and professional challenges. And the ongoing litigation and media scrutiny intensifies the stakes, where public perception and legal outcomes intersect, creating a landscape where emotional responses, strategic messaging, and creative choices are all leveraged to shape the narrative and protect certain individuals while managing risk. And the account of meetings lasting multiple hours, with participants describing ambush, surprise, and distress, highlights the psychological intensity experienced by those involved as they navigate the conflicting demands of professional obligation and personal boundaries. And the role of allies and confidants in shaping both perception and decision-making further illustrates the intricacies of influence networks, where trust, credibility, and emotional impact are constantly in tension. And the interplay between public statements, private communications, and legal testimony creates a high-drama scenario where every detail becomes consequential, from the tone of a meeting to the wording of a text message to the strategic disclosure of information to court or media. The convergence of personal ambition, professional influence, and legal strategy generates a story that is as intricate as it is compelling, and the emotional toll on participants becomes evident as descriptions of distress, embarrassment, and psychological strain emerge alongside strategic calculations and performative public presentations, creating a tension that is both gripping and deeply human. As the narrative progresses, the audience is drawn into the unfolding web of influence, manipulation, and emotion, where the stakes are immense, reputations hang in the balance, and every decision ripples outward with far-reaching consequences, impacting careers, legal outcomes, and public perception. And the story ultimately becomes a case study in power dynamics, celebrity influence, and the challenges of navigating high-profile conflicts in environments where fame, money, money and legal leverage intersect to create a drama that is as shocking, suspenseful, and impossible to ignore, capturing attention while revealing the complex human and systemic forces at play in Hollywood productions and legal disputes. And as the drama continues to unfold, every communication, meeting, and strategic choice adds a new layer of intrigue, tension, and insight into the realities of working at the intersection of fame, power, and accountability, creating a narrative that captivates, engages, and shocks the audience, while providing a lens into the inner workings of influence, strategy, and personal dynamics that define Hollywood culture and the legal landscape surrounding it. The intensity of the Hollywood power play surrounding Blake Lively, Ryan Reynolds, and Justin Baldoni escalates with each revelation, text message, and sworn declaration, revealing a web of interpersonal conflict, legal maneuvering, and strategic control that few could fully comprehend or navigate, as every meeting, every conversation, and every creative decision is magnified under the glare of public attention and the scrutiny of media coverage. And the narrative unfolds through layers of testimony and documentation that illustrate the psychological pressure, emotional strain, and professional stakes involved in high-profile productions, where the dynamics of influence, authority, and celebrity converge. And the January 4th meeting remains a focal point of controversy, where witnesses, including producers, line producers, and legal representatives, describe an encounter that was both emotionally and professionally harrowing, leaving participants shocked, frozen, and unsure how to respond, while Blake Lively's sworn statements seek to present a controlled, composed version of events that downplays Ryan Reynolds' participation and suggests calm, rational discourse, despite the contrasting accounts from witnesses and contemporaneous communications, which reveal a far more forceful and confrontational scenario, highlighting the discrepancies between private experience and public narrative. And the involvement of Hugh Jackman and Taylor Swift adds another layer of complexity, as Blake strategically omits or misrepresents their presence or influence in certain accounts, while leveraging their association for professional or creative advantage, revealing the intricate negotiation of perception and influence that defines interactions among Hollywood elites. And the creative decisions surrounding trailers, editing, and musical selections further complicate the story, illustrating how artistic choices were entangled with personal relationships, protective instincts, and strategic positioning, where Blake asserted authority over edits and leveraged her relationships to influence production outcomes. And the juxtaposition of private delight and public restraint demonstrates the duality in her approach to managing both personal satisfaction and professional image, creating a tension that is simultaneously compelling and disconcerting. And the communications and texts exchanged between Blake and her confidants reveal a mixture of pride, satisfaction, and strategic calculation, where she reflects on events with a sense of empowerment, while publicly maintaining an appearance of calm and professionalism, illustrating the careful orchestration required to manage reputation and influence in a high-stakes environment where credibility and perception can have career-altering consequences. And the involvement of attorneys with historical connections to high-profile figures, including Harvey Weinstein and Jeffrey Epstein, underscores the strategic legal maneuvering employed to protect powerful individuals, while potentially minimizing accountability for actions impacting others, illustrating the intersection of legal strategy, celebrity influence, and ethical considerations, where the balance of power is constantly in flux, and every decision carries weight and consequence. And as the timeline unfolds, the emotional toll on participants becomes evident through descriptions of distress, embarrassment, and psychological strain as individuals navigate the demands of professional obligation, personal boundaries, and the intense scrutiny of observers, while managing strategic messaging and influence in a landscape dominated by fame and public perception. And the narrative reveals the complexity of accountability, influence, and control in Hollywood, illustrating how decisions related to production, edits, trailers, and casting were deeply intertwined with the negotiation of personal relationships and professional leverage, creating a multifaceted story where every communication, meeting, and strategic choice carries significance. and the testimony of producers and legal representatives provides insight into the human impact of navigating emotionally charged, high-pressure situations where authority, influence, and fear intersect. And as the drama develops, the audience witnesses the cascading effects of these interactions on Baldoni, his professional experience and emotional well-being, as well as on the broader cultural perception of the events, highlighting how personal dynamics, professional strategy, and public narrative converge to shape understanding and interpretation. And the narrative extends beyond individual actions to illuminate systemic issues in Hollywood, where exploitation of women, prioritization of powerful figures, and manipulation of perception reveal broader cultural challenges in accountability, ethical responsibility, and professional integrity. And the unfolding narrative is further complicated by Blake's strategic use of communications to assert authority, influence, and control over production decisions, while simultaneously protecting associates and allies, including Taylor Swift and high-profile male figures, creating a tension between personal ambition, professional responsibility, and the ethical considerations of influence and narrative management. And as the accounts of meetings lasting multiple hours accumulate, the audience gains insight into the psychological intensity of navigating environments where fear, uncertainty, and power converge, while simultaneously maintaining performance and reputation. And the text messages illustrate the ongoing negotiation of creative control and the careful orchestration required to balance artistic vision with personal influence, professional responsibility, and strategic positioning, while managing public perception and legal exposure. And the duality of public composure and private satisfaction highlights the complexity of celebrity influence and the careful calibration necessary to navigate high-stakes legal and professional challenges in Hollywood productions and legal proceedings, where emotional responses, strategic communications, and creative decision-making are all leveraged to shape the narrative, protect certain individuals, and manage risk. While the testimony of multiple witnesses provide corroboration and nuance to the unfolding story, highlighting the human cost and emotional impact of navigating complex interactions where authority, influence, and accountability collide. And the story ultimately becomes a case study in the multifaceted dynamics of influence, negotiation, and perception management in Hollywood, illustrating how reputation, credibility, and ethical responsibility are constantly in tension, and every action carries potential consequences. And as the narrative progresses, the unfolding story of Blake Lively, Ryan Reynolds, and Justin Baldoni is a striking illustration of power, influence, and perception in Hollywood, where personal ambition, professional responsibility, and ethical accountability collide. And the contrast between public statements and private communications reveals a complex web of narrative shaping, strategic maneuvering, and emotional intensity that few outside the industry could ever fully grasp. As we have seen, the tension between personal relationships, creative control, and professional obligations create a volatile environment where every decision, meeting, and conversation carries profound consequences. And the discrepancies between sworn declarations, text messages, and eyewitness accounts highlight the fragility of credibility and the ways in which perception can be carefully managed, manipulated, and leveraged to protect certain individuals, while potentially minimizing the experiences and emotional impact on others involved. In the legal proceedings, further amplify the stakes, where reputation, career trajectory, and public understanding hang in the balance. And the audience witnesses the human cost of navigating emotionally charged, high-pressure situations where fear, uncertainty, and professional obligation converge, revealing the emotional strain, psychological toll, and ethical dilemmas faced by those caught in these high-profile conflicts. And as the narrative continues to unfold, it becomes clear that influence, reputation, and narrative control are deeply intertwined with personal relationships and professional leverage in ways that can have long-lasting implications for everyone involved. And while Blake Lively's actions may be seen as protective of certain powerful individuals, they also raise critical questions about accountability, transparency, and the broader cultural implications for women, men, and the entertainment industry as a whole. And ultimately, this story is a compelling, cautionary tale about the intersection of fame, power, and influence, illustrating how high-stakes environments can magnify human emotion, professional ambition, and strategic calculation, creating a narrative that captivates, shocks, and engages, while offering a window into the complex realities of navigating Hollywood, where every action is consequential and every word carries weight. And as viewers, we are left to consider not only the drama and intrigue of these events, but also the broader lessons about trust, influence, and accountability in a world where perception and reality are constantly in tension.